Welcome to everyone to the 2015 SHOT Show. This is Ernest Emerson over at Emerson Knives, and I've got a great opportunity to talk to you all about some of the new product that we've got this year. Actually, we've got more new models this year than we've had at any other introductory show like the SHOT Shows in the past. We've got more new ones than we've ever had, so this is exciting for us. And I think you're going to like some of the knives that we've got, and maybe some of the reasons that I've got those knives this year too. So let me start off by talking about a couple of them. This knife is called the Emerson Combat Fighter, and some of you know that I do some training and some teaching and all that. And I have a system called the Emerson Combat System, and we needed a knife to go along with that combat teaching. So this is the knife that I designed specifically for that. It's called the Emerson Combat System Fighter, and it's one of our signature series knives in that every knife is hand-checked by me and signed by me personally, so that every single one of these knives in the signature series passes through my hands as the final stamp of approval. So it's got my name on it that I hand-signed on it. So that's an important thing in my book for guaranteeing that, especially with a knife that you might have to ever use in a hard use situation, that I certified that I've looked it over and said it's good to go. It's got a kind of a scimitar-shaped blade, if you will, because when a human being makes any kind of a movement, especially in a I don't know, self-defense situation, I guess, if you will, every movement that you make is a curved movement. In other words, nothing's basically a straight line. Everything's a curve, no matter which direction it comes from or how you're holding the knife. And with a curved blade, what that allows you to do is, as opposed to a straight edged knife or a long straight edged knife, as that knife comes up through the curve, it constantly and continually introduces edge into the cut. And that's, of course, it can be applied in terms of combat between two humans, but at the same time, the principle is the same for anything that a knife is used for, whether you're cutting a seat belt or whittling a piece of wood or opening a cardboard box. As you draw that knife along, that curve keeps introducing new edge, so you're not basically cutting always in the same portion of the knife. I'd like to talk about another knife we've got here. It's our first, what I would call, big fixed blade, and it's not big in terms of length and all that, but it's a nice heavy knife. It's about a 3/16 inch thick blade. It's called the Government Mule, and it's a knife that I've had around for a couple of years, and just finally got to the point where it was time to bring it to the company and have it as a production knife that would go out to all those people that wanted a bigger, thicker Emerson fixed blade. And so this is our entry into that foray, and I'm real happy with it. It's got what we call a bullnose tip, or spear point, some people call it, which makes the knife extremely strong out in the end of the knife, where generally most knives get a little weaker. Because if you look at a knife, let's say a Bowie knife, for example, as material is removed from the blade to make it a more clipped point or a smaller, more delicate point, there's no denying the fact that less material makes it less strong. And so we made this knife knowing that if we're making hard-use knives, they got to live up to that reputation. And this knife is one that you could pry with. I'm not going to tell you to use it as a knife to lift up a manhole cover, but you probably might be able to do that if you had to. So, I have that much confidence in it. And again, a great knife called the Government Mule, because the Government Mules were some of the hardest workers in the United States Army for many years, and I hope that this one lives up to that name, and I think it will. So that's the Government Mule. And now I've got a knife, actually two versions of the knife that I'm very proud of. They're very special knives, and I'll tell you why. There's a gentleman whose name is Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, and I'm hoping that you've had the opportunity to become aware of who he is. He is the world's leading authority on human interaction in combat, on the stress that a human being endures in a combat situation. He is a former instructor at West Point Military Academy. He's known all over the world. He's testified before Congress and the United Nations and written some of the best-selling books in the tactical world that have ever existed. One called On Combat and one called On Killing, which are required reading, I believe, in all the military academies. And they're on my recommended reading list. So if you're listening to this and you don't have either of those books, pick them up because they're life changers, I'll tell you that right now. And Mr. Grossman, I've attended his lectures and been at some of his seminars, and he's become a hero to me. So when my phone rang one day and the person on the phone said, "Hey Ernie, this is Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. I was wondering if you'd like to make a knife with me." I had to stop and say, "No, wait a minute. Is this really Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman talking to me?" And he said, "Yeah, it is, Ernie. I've looked at your knives. I've carried them. I want you guys to be the guys that make a knife for me that's endorsed by me, and I know that I'd like to work with you because of how he regarded us." And I said, "For gosh sakes," I said, "this is like having Babe Ruth come in and teach me how to swing a baseball bat." I said, "That's the way I feel about it." And he said, "No, Ernie, I'm just another man." And I said, "No, you're not just another man. You're a very special man. You've saved thousands and thousands of lives during your career." So anyway, having said all of that, that's the way I feel about what we're doing here with this knife, and that's why I think they're very important. There's a couple reasons that they're important besides that fact, though, is these are the first Emerson knives that utilize the flipper opening mechanism. They also have a bearing system inside because, as you know, a flipper has to be very smooth and very clean when it opens up, or the flipping system won't work. I'll just give you a demo of ours. Boom. That's the Bowie style blade, and that is the spear point style blade. Again, when Mr. Grossman talked to me, he said there's certain things I'm going to require on the knife, and I said, "Well, go ahead, let me know what they are." He said, "Well, I want a flipper system, I want your wave system, and I want the button opening system so that in a harsh environment, under the conditions that bring us all to a gross motor skills environment, that the officer or the soldier has the ability to open that knife in a number of ways." So he said, "This way we'll have a triple play on this one. It'll be the flipper, the wave, and the button opener." At the same time, he said, "I need to have an extended choil area down here so that if the knife was ever jammed into anything, I would prevent your finger with a real positive stop from going forward." So we've incorporated those things into the knife. We made it what I believe to be just about the right size, especially for a police officer, because again, you're carrying a lot of gear. You can't carry a great big cumbersome knife because generally it's going to be in your pocket. You've already got other things that you carry in your pocket. It has to be a size that you would always be able to carry, that you would always have on you, whether you're on duty or off duty. So we needed to make sure that it was about the same size as what's kind of become the standard is the Emerson CQC7. So we replicated that as best we could. It's got a similar style of handle, but it's got all of those other features, including the bearing systems in it. And it's got David Grossman's logo on it, the Sheepdog knife and gun. And these are called the Sheepdog Rangemaster knives. They're available now, basically. The Bowies are ready to ship right now as we speak. And the spear points or the bullnose will be available very shortly. So again, a very exciting knife. It's probably one of the biggest honors of my career to work with someone of such esteem as the Lieutenant Colonel. And I'm just proud that he came and asked us to represent his knife. So having said that, we'll move on to another knife that's, to me, an important knife. I moved out to California when I was about 20 years old to study at a specific training academy called the Filipino Cali Academy. And at that time, back in the early 70s, it was the only full contact fighting school in the world. And it was run by two guys, a gentleman named Dan Inosanto and Richard Bastillo. And they were both original students of Bruce Lee, and they were also the people that Bruce Lee had given the mantle over to continue on with his method of teaching and his style of combat called Jeet Kune Do. And so I spent a lot of time getting the hell beat out of me by both of those instructors and also all the other students, but I hung in there. And it was something that changed my life, because being involved in those martial arts and training with those people has basically opened every door that has led to my success as an adult. And I'll tell you a real short story about that. When I was a student there, I was very poor, and at the time it was only $25 a month to be a member of that school, and there were times when I could not even afford to pay the dues at the school, and either Richard or Dan a couple times said, "Ernie, just go and clean the bathrooms up and sweep up, and we'll call it even Steven." And I was very grateful for that. But because of the Filipino influence, because both Dan and Richard are both Filipino, we did a lot of stuff with the butterfly knives, the ballet song. And at the time, the best ballet songs in the world were made by a company called Pacific Cutlery, which was the precursor to Benchmade. And so I couldn't afford to buy one of those expensive Pacific Cutlery ballet song knives, so I decided that I could make one. So with a hacksaw and a drill and a file and a lot of sweat and a lot of blisters, I built my first knife, which was a ballet song knife. So funny thing is, it was because of Benchmade, if you will, that I started making my first knife. And then the irony that turned out was that eventually Benchmade came to me and said, "Ernest, we'd like you to design a knife for our company," which was the CQC7. So like I said, by being a member of that academy and being in with those people, it led to all the things that I have now, that I'm enjoying the fruits of all of that effort because of that association. So I make knives because I was at that school. Benchmade came and gave me the opportunity to build a knife that got out to the people, that helped boost my career and brought us eventually to where we are today. And my instructor, Richard Bastillo, who is still a very, very close friend of mine, and is one of the most probably well-respected martial arts instructors in the world, and was given the name of the Iron Dragon. Bruce Lee was always, his name translated basically to he was called the Little Dragon, and Bruce gave the nickname to Richard, called him the Iron Dragon because of how tough Richard was. He was hard as nails, by the way. And so over the years, the Iron Dragon, who is Richard Bastillo that I'm talking about, became a very good friend, a very strong influence in my life because of the high morals and the high standards of excellence that he demanded in his students, demanded of himself, and demanded of all the people that were associated with him. I learned a lot from him, and let's just say that was outside the realm of martial arts, but made me a better person. So this knife is called the Iron Dragon, and we made it, designed it, and built it in honor of Richard Bastillo, the real Iron Dragon. And it's our first integral lock knife with a titanium integral lock that features the steel lock insert, so that if the knife wears or the lock wears, we can just pop the insert out and put a new one in, so that we don't have to change the whole knife out or change the blade out. It also has a bearing system in it to make it silky smooth, so it can open in a heartbeat, and G10 handle on one side, all titanium on the other side, 154 cm blade with a slight recurve and a nice belly, because as a fighting knife, calling it the Iron Dragon, it had to have a little bit of flair to it, and it had to have the looks of a fighting knife but still actually be a real fighting knife. And I think I nailed that pretty good. So this knife, again, called the Iron Dragon, it's a little thinner because we've been able to eliminate all the liners on each side, so it rides real nice in your pocket. And it's a lightweight knife. It's very quick in your hand and very, very comfortable. And I think you're going to like it a lot. And I'm very proud of it. And my mentor and Sifu, Richard, is also very, very excited about it. And you know, that was the bottom line. Although I care about all of you out there as my customers and loyal fans, I was really more worried that Richard said, I like this knife when I showed it to him. And he said, not only do I like this knife, he goes, Ernie, I really love this knife. So that I knew I was done at that point. So now it's here and it's available for you also. So anyway, those are the new products we've brought to the show this year. I hope you enjoy them. You can get a hold of Blade Headquarters. They carry all of these knives in stock, and enjoy them, and have a wonderful and prosperous year. Thank you all.